Hello, hello. Welcome to The Play That Changed My Life. I'm Patrick White. This is the podcast to get more theater in your life. Brought to you by Harbinger Theater and OSM Studios. I have a very special Meeting Across the River podcast today to reference Bruce Springsteen. We have some guests here from the Troy Foundry Theater. I'm thrilled to welcome Han Van Sciver. Yeah, who's directing In Camera, the next production at Troy Foundry Theater, and I've just found out that I've seen Han on stage multiple times.
Weird.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's really fun to be here.
Yeah.
That is crazy that we've been in many rooms together.
Yeah,
actually.
and I have loved those rooms and a park.
Very kind. Oh my God, yeah.
A room in a park. And one of my oldest friends in Capital Regional Theater.
Very old.
Very old. Very
Multiple
old.
decades, really.
Yes, we were older then. We were younger now. Whatever that is. David Girard, Artistic Director of Troy Foundry Theater. How are you, David?
Good, Patrick. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. This is going to be a good one. So, welcome. I'm so excited to have you two here and talking about some news that I just noticed in the paper this morning, the laptop this morning. Jen Silverman has a new op-ed in the New York Times, and I don't know the timing on this, why it's in today's paper. Tony nominations are tomorrow, but it's about the need for art, unruly art, that we need art that disturbs us, that challenges us, that makes us look at uncomfortable things within us, they identifying things which we might not we're not proud of, or basically saying that we don't need a morality in our art. We don't need to judge our characters as good or bad, and I want characters that I like. What do you think of that?
I love it. I don't know. I think Jen Silverman's a genius. Yeah, and that resonates with me deeply right now. Even just, I feel like we're always like in a moment of crisis in the American theater, but we're having a moment, I think, of like deep confusion about what we're doing. With all these shows opening and capitalism happening all around us, and a sort of like bad, soft ramp back to normal after the pandemic. I think that's like a very necessary voice.
Yeah.
That, like,
you think it's a moment of crisis right now in American theater? Is it as far as, there are commercial markets, like we're not at the level we were at 2019, or?
It's just all the like regional theaters closing.
Yeah.
And for me, I actually think like the regional theater scene is kind of the heart of the theater.
It is the backbone of American theater.
So in some ways,
it was created to do. It was created to be as such too, right? From the Federal Theater Project through to the NEA, right? And all that's been gutted. But I think we are in crisis. I mean, I say this to my students that is theater dying?
No, theater won't die.
And it actually isn't. Actually, financially and economically, it's making more money worldwide than it ever has. But when you look at the material that's kind of behind a lot of that money, it isn't the kind of art that I'm necessarily interested in. So I love this idea of like, if it's a reflection of our lives right now, the world's a mess. It's a disaster. There's so many terrible things going on, and what's on stage, what's on our films, what's in our television, but particularly what's on stage, the live communal work that we're supposed to do and experience together has to reflect that, and it shouldn't be pretty. And I think I said I don't subscribe to ideas of good and evil. I don't think anybody's inherently good or evil. I think we are a natural occurrence of what is going on around us. We are I don't want to say victim. I don't want to necessarily use the word victims, but like we're made the way we are because of external factors.
Yeah. Yeah, Harbinger had a string of shows recently. I don't know whether there was any pattern to it, but where characters behaving badly, and we're like, no, they just have these needs, they have these wants that they act on them, and whether, whether it's for us to judge,
Yeah.
is it?
I think you also used the word messy talking about this article,
Yeah.
that Jen's advocating for messy plays. And I think also even like independently of talking about capitalism, just the way like we think about morality on stage and the way we make work, I feel like we're not allowed to be very messy right now, or people are very afraid to be very messy right now.
Yeah.
Because I think we're trying to make sense of this really horrible moment. And
a premium put on success making. in this
Exactly,
country,
right.
Like you're not allowed to fail. You're not allowed to fall on your face. You're not allowed to. And it's like that's ridiculous. You can't. That's not how you make art. You make
Yeah.
art by like screwing up
And being messy.
like constantly screwing up
Well,
and going, wow, that didn't
yeah.
work. Let's try this new thing. Oh, that didn't work. Well, let's try it this way. I mean, that's the rehearsal process, right? You
And
know?
for me, that's the beauty of theater is like the poorest, simplest option is always the most
always.
deeply satisfying. This is a good segue into in camera. I was literally having this conversation with one of our designers last night. We have a really magical effect in the show, and we were like, oh, we'll have to get something to do it, and talking about spending money, and then, no, we'll have to build something, and we had all these difficult ideas on the table, and then we tried something really simple, and it's perfect.
Great.
Anyway, it's always the way.
But like if we were really worried about nailing it, we would have probably bought a really expensive machine.
But as the Mandalorian tells us, this is the way.
This is the way. Good, we covered a lot just now.
Yeah.
We really started big.
And now we go to the opening number.
Yeah, that's
Da-da-dun, da-da-dun. It's funny you mentioned the Federal Theater because, I was reading another article where the House Un-American Committee came out of reactions to the Federal Theater. And sort of like, the old NEA arguments about, mandating or policing art.
Was it the Living Newspaper particularly that they were reacting to? I think maybe those particularly those pieces that the Federal Theater Project was doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the year on this?
This is the 30s that the Federal Theater Project. It
late
comes out of the
30s.
Works Progress Administration, FDR's New Deal. NEA's later. NEA's like I think.
Yeah. No, that's in the 80s. I was talking about the Mapplethorpes and
Yes. Yeah.
when the NEA was gutted.
Yeah.
But
We've always had a complicated. I was asking the year because I was just working on a piece set in speakeasies in New York where there was these evolving laws about types of cabaret as cabaret was bleeding into Broadway and all this sort of upper lower class amazing mixing on these Broadway stages, and there were all these laws essentially that came out very quickly on the heels of that, and then we had World War II, which is just to say like I don't know that theater's always had like a questionable relationship with morality, or at least commercial theater.
Yeah.
I think, and it's always like the punk rock and the highbrow, and then the highbrow adapts something that's too punk, and then now that's highbrow. So anyway.
Right. Well, speaking of the Tony Awards, I mean the plays this year don't seem to be very. I don't know if the word cheery. There's not a lot of slap happy. Even in the musical category, there's no, even Book of Mormon, which was quite pointed and satire, but there's no happy.
We had Spamalot.
There's Heart of Rock and Roll,
And
the
we
Huey
had
Lewis,
We had that.
musical.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So championing It's Hip to Be Square, which we can all get behind.
I'll get behind. Oh, gosh.
Right?
No, I didn't get to see Spamalot, but I heard
right.
Spamalot was a delightful time.
Yeah.
My friend Leslie.
Yeah, but in the play, Leslie's a friend.
Oh, cool.
Give a no.
Oh, Leslie.
A shout out to Leslie
Leslie
Kritzer,
Kritzer.
who is a Barrington stage mainstay. Yeah, we love Leslie.
I met Leslie doing a reading, and she's a buddy.
Excellent.
Anyway, yeah, and I saw a lot of clips of her in that show, and I was like, how dare you? She's so fun. Did you see any of her work?
No. No, I did not see
Really,
that.
really fun.
Excellent.
Really funny. Anyway, so we had
Yeah.
a little joy, okay? We had a little joy.
Yes, a soupçon. But, in the play category, there's Mary Jane, about a woman with a terminally ill child, and Patriots, about the creation of Putin, and
Yeah. Stereophonic.
Stereophonic, about a drug-fueled, no, the artistic creation among a Fleetwood Mac-like band. Beautiful piece.
Yep. Shout out Will Brill.
Yeah. Oh, my. Will Brill.
Yep. Shout out to Will Brill's dog, Molly.
Will Brill.
Walk his dog.
Did you really?
Yes.
The case for the existence of God.
He's a really marvelous actor.
I saw Will Brill. I went to theater for the New City, Austin Pendleton, Orson Shadow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just a couple of weeks ago.
Nice.
And Will Brill was in the audience.
Oh, he's wonderful.
Yeah.
He played my brother in that TV thing I just did. So that's how I met him.
What TV thing?
Walking Dead.
Are you talking about the Walking
Shut
Dead
up,
that you
David.
appeared in?
Walking Dead?
Yes.
There's a Walking Dead
And
spin-off
just did
show. I was in an episode.
An episode. Well, you didn't just do it. You filmed it a while
Filmed it
ago.
a while ago. That's true. Literally before
Were
the
you a
strike.
zombie?
You have to watch to find out.
Oh!
Yeah. I mean,
Watch
that's,
my-
I'm in the room with
No. It was.
flesh eaters.
I mean, listen. It was a fun little arc.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay, great.
I mean, look
Yeah.
at the zombie shows. I mean, like we look at like the prevalence of what we're seeing on television, what we're seeing on film, and this sort of like darkness that's like it's like the superheroes have kind of gone away, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like we're through that trend now, and now we're starting to see something bubble up. And look at this election year. I mean, what the next year could look like is so mind-boggling as far as the directions it could take, and not just in this country, worldwide. And I think this is osmosis. That's what our theater is reflecting.
Yeah.
An uneasiness, and I mean like a sort of agitated uneasiness. And I think that's messy. I think that's sort of like that is going to be the kind of work that is like it's going to question morality, but it's not going to like make the decision for you, right? And I think that's really important. Like the theater should not be making the decision for the audience. Theater is sort of presenting a lot of these ideas and basically kind of going, "What do you think? What are you gonna do?" You know, I mean, that's kind of the best work. Is like, you know, it is that Brecht thing, like, you know, leave the theater and a call to action, right? And right now I think we're at a place where our theater is starting to move in a very like strong direction into a call to action. Like, you know, we're going to present these really kind of, I mean, horrible ideas, these horrible situations, these untenable situations.
Yes.
Because this is what we're going to start facing. I mean, just even looking at climate change, this is what we're going to start facing on the daily. It's almost like preparing. You know what I mean? Because I think we're all gone in 40 years. I'm definitely gone in 40 years.
So well, yeah. I mean, you're talking about like a type of fatalism, but I also think
it is. Yes,
yeah.
But I mean, there's hope there.
Well,
But I also think part of messy art is making art with lots of room to dream. You know, like to me, those things are holding hands with each other, and I do think like theater's about going somewhere and going somewhere else.
Yes.
And getting to be in a different space. And I don't think like I don't want to use the word escapism. I don't think that's quite what I'm discussing, but like there is a way that I think like theater can be like also like a soft spot to land. Yeah. Well, that's something I'm interested in this piece is like there's elements in this piece in camera that we're working on. We're deep in tech. We have an audience on Wednesday we had an audience.
There'll be a few of us in there on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But, the public can attend on Wednesday. But you know, it takes place in sort of this like nether region in a room consumed by plastic. There's a feeling that there's surveillance happening, and there's two people who can't leave the room. Sort of the setup, but it ricochets between feeling like really robotic and stale and cold, and also feeling like very tender and beautiful because it also is kind of a love story. And so for me, what is really wonderful to explore in the piece is the relationship between those two. You know, the apocalypse and the human. You know, the metal and the organic, and like.
The end and the beginning.
The end and the beginning.
Yeah. In this womb-like.
Yeah, womb is a good
Very-
word for it,
very
actually.
atmosphere.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So In Camera has 3 playwrights.
Yes.
Who's it by?
It is by
Cameron Beck, Mitchell Johnson, and Amber Wheeler.
And was it part of Half Baked?
Yes, it came out of Half Baked,
Which is new for Troy Foundry?
which was new last year. We're doing it again this year. We decided to move it to the fall. It just felt like because it wants to sort of be a sort of like Trojan fringe festival, and I mean, and we want to expand it this year. And I think moving into like future years, like expanding it even more, like making it real, like full on, kind of like a lot of what you've been talking about lately, which is like we need a theater festival, and it's sort of like we kind of already have one, and it's just like this small one. We had 8 pieces last year. 4 pieces came from our company, 4 others came from sort of like outside company or like playwrights that like we had like a little bit of experience, like Chris Ellie Black, like our friend Leah. And this year, I think we'll probably expand Half Baked. Probably, I'm going to say probably like 10 to 12 pieces, maybe up to 16. Probably, we had 5 venues this year. I'd like to move to about 8 venues. It's kind of great because like Hard Candy and Misdemeanors came out of Half Baked, and so did this. And this is one of our company members, Cameron Beck, and partnered with their friends Mitchell and Amber and created this piece. And I had no expectations going in and watching this piece, and I got to see they did two performances of it during Half Baked last year at Alias Coffee, and I was really blown away. I just didn't I didn't have that expectation for it because I was like, this is a piece in process. That's what Half Baked is. These are pieces that aren't done, and that's okay. And they're going to be at various levels of done. And I was like, oh, I had the same reaction with Hard Candy. I'm like, well, that's pretty done. It's a little more than. Just feels a little more than Half Baked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were able to devote a little bit of time after the fact at Art Farm, which we do with the Elizabeth F. Murray Foundation and Colorworks Art Gallery. We go to a farm in August for a week, and we work on usually new work. And so last year we worked on various pieces at Art Farm, but Cam had a chance to do a little bit more writing, do a little bit more of updating the script, and it's just been little by little playing with it, and then handed it off to Han. Han and the actors worked together down in Brooklyn for a lot of this rehearsal process, and they also played with the script in concert with Cameron and Mitchell, and so
and Amber too. We rehearsed for about 2.5 weeks, I'd say, in my apartment. I was lucky to have an empty living room space. And I mean the script is. It's funny in describing it. I've been like talking about Carol Churchill and also talking about Sarah Kane and also talking about like weirdly Harold Pinter. Some of it almost plays that way.
I mean those 3 playwrights are really
right.
Yes, the Carol Churchill absolutely came to mind for me, and so did Pinter. Yeah.
But Kane for the psychotic poetry element.
That's true.
But the playwrights and I were a little bit in concert. It's a wonderful word. Basically, what I ended up doing is just, they let me cut a lot of the piece.
Shape it.
I don't want to say shape it, but it's like back to what we were saying. It's a very unruly text, and I got it, and I was like, okay, how are we gonna make this happen? And so I think that sort of this version of it with these actors bringing themselves to this piece, it's like an essentialized version of it. And we tried to crack it as well as we could. We made a lot of proposals about how the world might function, and then we got here, and we found this. David showed us our space, and we immediately started covering it in plastic. We spent the past 4 days kind of in this very little. I like the word womb. Also thinking of an igloo or a cocoon. Creating what is like it's. I mean, we had Mitchell there yesterday all day, one of the writers, and they have a gift, and they helped us almost fabricate the entire space with this plastic, and it feels a little bit like you're walking into an art installation with Bjork meets Alexander McQueen.
Nice.
Am I wrong?
Yes.
Am I wrong?
No, it's great. I mean, anybody that's
Is it warm?
Yes and no. It kind of is. It's both deeply cozy and also really unnerving, and I think that's
kind of the idea. Yeah,
the idea is you're like...
It does definitely, if you're walking and you're like, yeah, this is definitely a Troy Foundry Theater show.
Good.
It feels that way. It's really funny about our work, too, because, there used to be, if there was it was something I'd hear every once in a while with our earlier work, was that in some ways it lacked hope. So a lot of our work was sort of end of worldish, end of empire, end of era, slightly dystopian, whatever. And maybe that's true. I don't know. But what's interesting is, like, right up to the pandemic, that was the verve, and then, like, the pandemic hits, and then we do these. I think it was Models of Perfection, and there was this, like, great sense of, like, just, like, lightness of being, and of course that's Angelique. Shout out to Angelique Powell, who was amazing in that piece. Really just lifted us all up, and each successive piece, I guess, has had this sense of hope. And I think like since because the pandemic, I feel like up to the pandemic, it was like, well, we told you this was going to happen. You know what I mean? It's kind of like where our work was going, and then coming out of it, and again looking at the world around us. Like, again, there's no moral judgments, right? But I think the idea of, like, having some kind of optimism in the human condition is super important.
Well, I think going back to Theater Will Never Die, in, like, the creation of Troy Foundry Theater, and that there was this new theater art that was unique and singular and being grown right before our eyes, and that people were traveling to, and that they were doing it in these new spaces. Like, it was like such a breath of fresh air, and it was like you're watching this thing being born. Like, how could it not be optimistic, even when
Right?
you had the topics, and you had when it was in the gas works, or
doing the Beckett stuff.
the very dusty Beckett. But you had a lot of historical pieces that the Prohibition piece, and Illyrium, the fire.
Where there's smoke, Ilium burns. Yeah.
But here we are. It was a history of Troy. And now Troy houses Troy Foundry Theater. So it was optimistic in that you were witnessing this with a couple of dozen other folks, and growing Capital Region Theater, and moving us in a direction that we never even considered. So, there was hope in the creation.
Yes.
For me, theater is inherently optimistic in that way too, particularly now. It's like, how rare is it that we actually gather together, and watch something happen in real time, not through a screen.
Wow.
But also, even it's also tied to this play. There's screens in the show, which have been really fun to play with.
Yeah.
I'm, like, pretty anti-screen on stage in general. For me, like, theater's an opportunity for something analog to happen in front of us.
Yeah.
But in this show, it's really actually about the relationship with sort of the futurism and the analog. So, we have screens, but they're misbehaving within the play itself. Mm-hmm. And so that's been fun to play with. Is like, for me, anytime I have a screen or a projector or anything of the sort, it always completely dominates the tech process because it won't work properly.
Yeah.
And
it's like a gun.
Yeah, exactly. And so literally.
It's Seagull.
Yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm. We've been talking about Chekhov's gun a lot in rehearsal for a play that has nothing to do with that. But anyway, we spent the past 2 days, like, basically building cues to make it look like the screens are breaking down, which was deeply satisfying, because I was like, well, this is what always happens anyway in tech. And, we almost had a rule in the room last night where we were like, if the screen glitches, keep it. Whatever it does that's wrong, keep it, and make that the basis for the next move. Anyway.
Nice. Thank you, Han. That's very valuable.
Oh, good.
No. Chris and I are both tackling scripts that have projections, and we're like, use them, don't use them. Now I don't know. I'm 100%.
I'm like, we can go to the theater and we can do it in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Is that the only way? And if it is, like, it has to be the only way. It has to have been.
Yeah.
And I buy it in this show, what we've built, that it's like, it has to be this.
You know, for a while, it was like, oh, projections. Oh, what
I don't know.
pain.
Maybe I'm being,
No, but then some companies, Schenectady Civic Players, did
Sure.
Frost Nixon, and it's like, how do you do this without
Right,
projections? You know, so
Also, I mean, projection mapping just in general
Right.
has really like just taken a huge leap. You know, I think of like shows like Curious Incident. My friend Travis just did Water by the Spoonful out in Denver, and Travis Wright, it's, our resident sound designer, isn't working on this production because they're buying a house. Hi, Travis and Katie. Shout out to them. Both company members down in Brooklyn. They just bought a house, so they're like really busy with that. But Travis worked on a production of Water by a Spoonful and came to my class and presented it. And it was these boxes. It was amazing design. You should look it up. It's so amazing. And I was like, how did you accomplish that? Did you use Isadora, which is this really really difficult software, blah, blah, blah. And Travis is like, no, all in QLab. I was like, all of it in QLab can do this now? It used to be like minor projections and projection mapping you could do in QLab, but now it's like you can do like major mapping on like three-dimensional surfaces and stuff like that. So it's taken a huge leap, which is awesome. But it's also
seductive, right?
It's seductive because you and I occupy a certain generation, Patrick, where there are things that we remember. We remember a really not digital world and like conscious memories. But we're also very comfortable in the digital world because it's that age that we're in. Because we're Gen X, and so we like, and I'm wild about the analog and the hyper digital. I like
That's this play.
If I were doing a Pinter play, any particularly let's say the birthday party, what year are you setting it in? I'm not, and I might play with anachronism, and I want the audience to be a little unsettled, to not know, because that's what Pinter's doing, right? And I don't quite want the audience to know where we are, what time of year, or what I should say, what year it is, what period it is. And so if working on a play like that, let's say there's a phone on the wall, it's like, what's the phone gonna look like?
Right, chord.
And to me, I'm like that's I will obsess about any technology that's in this space. I feel like this piece is a little bit like that.
Mitchell used that word. I was one of our playwrights, the one who built with Cameron yesterday, built all this incredible plastic with us. Mitchell used the word retrofuturism, talking about inspiration for the piece, which I think is a way of thinking of that sort of full aesthetic of, we're holding hands with this sort of analog past and also this increasingly digital future. I feel like it's
so the way that we used to believe the future looked like.
Sure. Or for me, it's even more tied to a vision of the future where, there's sort of still the what do I want to say here? The dangling specter of the past, and it's also envisioning a future where, yes, there are these huge jumps forward, but also there's probably not good distributive equity of resources. And so there are still people who are like, yep, I have to make all my food in a microwave, or, actually the only thing we have here to watch media on is a really old projector, it's that.
There's still a Mr.
mix.
Coffee maker.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
That's what we have. We have a
there's
Mr.
still
Coffee maker.
Maker. You're not exactly sure where you are, but there's still a Mr. Coffee maker.
And it's funny to learn the math of what objects make us feel which way,
Yeah, and I think that's I think that's something that theater does that is uniquely theater that doesn't happen in film and television, that happens in a live space of when you can take something that is mundane, and all of a sudden it becomes, it's sort of all of a sudden it's how you get a word, all of a sudden a word that you say feels very weird. It's this brain trick all of a sudden when you start saying a word over and over again. You're like, why does that word doesn't seem like a real word anymore? When you look at a piece of a prop or a piece of scenery that is everyday life, that's where we recognize, we know exactly what it is, and then somehow it just sort of shifts for us, depending on let's say how an actor uses it. When is a coffee cup not a coffee cup? It's when you put it on the palm of your hand and you hold it up in the air and you turn it into something that's sacred.
We literally talked about this, our first phone call about the show, you remember?
Yeah, exactly. It's that Anne Bogart sort of architecture kind of thing of when is something not something? How can we shift an audience's sort of feeling change the essence of an object, an interpretation even of a moment. That's something that we expect emotionally between two people, and then subvert that. Working in live theater, like I love that. I just love those. I almost use the F word because I
Can we use
love
the
those
F word on
moments.
this podcast? No.
You get one.
Use it well.
I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can say I freaking.
Love.
Freaking love.
I love
love
those
that.
moments.
Yeah.
I love those moments when I see those moments. When I have a hard time sitting watching. I just do. I get very angsty watching theater because I want to see more of that, and I'm not always seeing that, and so I get very angsty. Unless it's got a really strong emotional through, like Sweat like swayed me. A lot of Sweat swayed me. There was some unbelievable acting in that production, right?
Yeah. I
kind of expect a little. I'm a little afraid to go see Three Mothers because I feel like it's going to be devastating, But because that story is just it's heartbreaking, and the concept that the playwright comes up with. It's the playwright. There's a very famous picture of these three mothers who lose their sons.
Yeah.
Cheney,
murdered by the
Goodman, and
kids.
Schwerner.
Yes, and so the play is built off of just this photograph, which is a really interesting prompt to build a play.
Oh, so fun.
Off of a photograph.
Such a good devising prompt.
And to me, like the emotionality will probably carry that play. But when we're grappling with let's say less naturalistic ideas and stories, and maybe even in some ways deconstructive narratives, that's when I get obsessed with this stuff in this space. I'm like, it is the essentialist. It is why is that thing there? They're not using that thing. They haven't touched that thing that pen has been on the table the entire play.
Everything
Why
gets
is that pen
really-
there?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Everything gets really important suddenly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I just want to shout out our actors in this show.
Sure.
Because I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, actually, oh God, I almost said the most important object in the space is the actors, and I realize that's a horrible thing to say. The most important thing in the space in this play is the live bodies occupying the space, and I mean that's where all the story has to happen. Marcy M. and Max Raymond are both tremendously beautiful and very open in this piece, but that is sort of the thing. Like, we're in a world that feels almost the encroaching technological. It feels like the room's about to eat itself, but there's these two very alive people in the center of it. And so I also feel like we're filtering all the objects through what, I don't know, they say you can't be on stage with a live animal or a baby because it's just you'll never be the most interesting thing.
Right.
And I do feel like there's, again, a math of wanting to make, the text primary and then my actors primary and then the space in support of them. And it's been interesting to build the show out of order where we sort of built a skeleton in my apartment and then came here and we were like, oh, actually it's a different animal skeleton, so we're gonna have to use this skeleton now, but we can whatever. I don't know how this metaphor unfolds because then we're gonna get into building meat. I don't know. It got weird on me, but
Excellent.
Yeah, but it's a little Frankenstein-y.
Yeah, no. Well, you rehearsed the show in Brooklyn, brought it up to Troy, and now you're building it around your tech.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
That's what Jen Silverman's talking about.
The Brooklyn teams.
Yeah.
It's kind of that's been really kind of cool too because, I mean, we have a lot of. It's really nice to get. I mean, the pandemic. What was so hard is that we had a lot of friends from Philadelphia and Brooklyn and New York, I should say. But we were bringing up here, and then all of a sudden that stopped. And what was interesting about that was that it forced us to sort of well, we already do work in site-specific spaces, so we started doing the alley stuff. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, a certain aspect of our company really grew in a very positive way. But what's been amazing is also to have that and also revisit these relationships that we've had. Certainly bringing Brenna back up to work on Gay Narcissist and Antonio. Where Shane is going to Philly with the piece that he did for Play on Lab, Antonio or What I Would, which is such a great piece, as a fundraiser for Clark Park Shakespeare down in Philly. And Broken Record in the Oddity, Katie and Travis's piece is being remounted TBD date-wise, I think later in the summer or early in fall.
In Troy?
In Manhattan.
Oh.
Actually. So, yeah, we're kind of it's kind of cool that we've got, and then going into Half Baked and Art Farm later this year.
So, David, you and I go way, way, way back. No, one of the first people I met in theater when I moved back home
from New York,
New York.
And you stayed?
Here? Where else was I going to go? This is last stop.
No,
This is the Last Chance Saloon. No,
We have a pretty good last chance saloon, though. I mean,
I remember we were trying to pinpoint when I met David, and the same with you, Han.
Sure, yeah.
I met David first by seeing him on stage.
Oh, wow.
In All in the Timing.
Oh, yeah.
It was.
David Ives.
It was. I moved back home from Manhattan, heartbroken that I couldn't break into the guiding light, and I moved back home, and I was living in my old bedroom. And I went to Albany Civic Theater. I think it was like the first thing I saw back home.
Yeah.
And David was with a brilliant production of All in the Timing, directed by Bob Gepfert.
Shout out to Bob. Shout out to Bob Gepfert. Who
Doug Delisle, Richard Rowe, Eric Rose, Benita.
Kathleen Carey? Wasn't Kathleen? No, Kathleen wasn't in that.
No.
Wait, isn't Kathleen Carey in
Not
everything?
No. Michelle Sanders. But it was an awesome production, and I was like,
Was in that, yeah.
oh, there's theater outside of Manhattan.
There's
Oh,
like
that's
outside
good
my
to know.
apartment. Yeah.
And it kind of gave me the hope that I that my life could go on. But yeah, so
I think that's fascinating for you. That's fascinating for you to say, like, because like now you are easily the biggest champion of theater in the capital region.
Because
I
it
can't
saved my life.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I mean, I know this on a personal level, but it's just like it's fascinating to me to hear that, like to go from like this like shell of yourself coming from Manhattan, saying there's nothing outside of New York, nothing, and then to, like now,
I was dead. I was dead. I had to like kill part of myself to leave.
Yeah.
Like I had to like say, that part of my life is over.
Yeah.
Over. To leave, to get
You have
out.
to do that too.
To get out. It was like Escape from New York. It was
wow.
Snake Plissken. I was I was on a mission, and I got up here, and I was a mess.
Yeah.
But we have a great history together, doing stuff at Albany Civic Theater and The Pope and the Witch.
What's the Pope and the
Oh,
Witch?
that was a Dario Fo show. That was.
I'll leave that be.
Well, someone on the board eventually read the play.
Oh, I hate when that happens. That can really
That's right. I forgot. That got a little
process.
controversial.
You forgot
Oh,
that?
that's right, because it involves the Pope and abortion.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
and there was someone on the board that was like, "Mo, this involves the Pope and abortion. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this." Like, okay.
Okay, well.
Yeah. And great stuff like Love, Valor, Compassion, Good,
Yes. Oh man.
Cloud 9.
Love Cloud
Cloud 9, so much fun. We really had a fun. Patrick's partner Chris Foster directed a really brilliant production of Cloud 9, and I remember when my grandmother died, and I found out right before I went on stage, and I got through the first act and I was fine, and then I had to play Kathy in the second act, and I was playing a little baby, and Carole King. It was that moment where Betty, older Betty, is comforting Kathy, and I started to cry, and I was okay that I was crying because it was like that's what I'm playing a little. I'm playing a little girl. I mean, that's what I'm playing. I'm playing a little girl. But I started, but I always remember that moment because I was just like that was such a joyous, fun. That was a really fun because I think we all knew we would probably never all get to be in a show like that. That group of people, you, me, Richard, Kathleen, working with Chris, and it was just, we had a blast.
It was wild.
Yeah.
It was wild.
I love that
Yeah, you were great in heels.
Chris said to me, my partner, "You're not going for the feminine, are you?"
Feminine can look like a lot of different things.
And
Excuse me.
to declare.
I said, don't put that on
the
me.
best time. What do you mean?
I played the grandma in the first act. And
Yeah.
I played, is her name Lee? The mom, Kathy's mom.
Kathy's mom is, I think it's Lee. I think that's the character's name. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was college for me.
It's a great time. Forgive us, Anne,
No, it's
for
great.
going down.
This is the stuff.
Yeah, no, it was great times. Really brilliant. But I was going to say, so you went on to Theater Institute at Sage, and then you got your master's degree at Temple, where I thought you had met Brenna. Yes,
Well, I met
Brenna
Brenna
Geffers.
via Temple. Her partner Ross had graduated with the MFA program right before me, but also, they had gone through. Brenna had gone through Temple's MFA directing program, and I was introduced to Brenna and Ross at a party that was thrown by Dan Kern. May he rest in peace. That Dan recently passed away. He was the acting professor. He ran the directing program for a while there too, and but ran the MFA acting program at Temple. He was very close with Tim Dugan actually, and Charlie Del Marcel, who worked with us. And that was a big loss in the Philadelphia theater community. But Dan had this get together with all these former folks that had gone, and Brenna and I met, and we did not like one another at all. I mean, it took us years. Honestly, like we were very cordial, but we used to drink and argue.
Okay.
We used to drink and argue, and then when I went back to Philly, I saw Brenna's.
What's wrong with that?
No, that's friendship.
But I started seeing Brenna's work, and Brenna is a brilliant, just
Yeah.
brilliant.
Brenna's why I'm
Which is
here,
where-
probably. Although technically here, because I'm trying to string this all together.
Yes. Thank you.
David and I did a show together in Philly 6 years ago.
Yes.
The Leidy Breeze trilogy at Ego Po Theater, John Guare set of plays, and it was
Yep.
like a 6 or 7 month contract. So
It was.
I did not like David Girard when I first met him.
Common thread.
I mean, first
Common
impressions.
thread.
I don't know.
I wasn't.
I liked it.
I wasn't prepared to like him. And then I did. But I think we stayed close after that process also because you had Philly ties, and Brenna's a mentor and best friend, honestly, family of mine. And I was up in Troy recently, visiting Brenna, seeing my friend David, and then David had the fun idea to bring this piece that Brenna and I are building together, separate from any of this, called Gay Narcissus. Brought it to Troy, and
And you did a workshop of it at the Orchard Project. I got to
That's
see
how
a
David
small
first
piece of
saw
that
it,
last
yeah.
summer. It was not a public performance; it was an invited performance, and they were kind enough to invite me. And I was like, "Yeah, I want to see this piece."
And you helped us do it. You lent us the guitar and stuff. So anyway, you invited us to do it again in Troy, and I was here even more recently. And then this play came through the pipeline, and you said, "This has all been leading up to this moment."
And I was like, "I
Excellent.
cannot direct this play. I am not the director
not
for this
for me.
play
Yeah.
at all."
What made you determine that?
The play wants to lean into non-binary and or trans lives and thoughts and ideas and identities.
Yeah.
And as much as I value my friends that live those lives, I'm a white cis male. Sadly. Look at Patrick's like nodding, like, yeah, Girard. Sadly.
No, I mean
There were days, Patrick, when I thought I might go in one direction. But
Yes,
no,
when we played Lovers.
that's what did it. It was a confusing time. Yeah.
Yes. Bobby.
you were a great kisser. But I knew that immediately. I mean, I knew that when I met with we knew we were going to do this, and I think we really decided late last year. I would say even before that, like in the fall. I knew right off the bat. I was like, "Well, I'm certainly not going to be directing this piece." And
Far too weird.
yeah.
It is. It's weird. It's a weird piece.
Yeah, but I think it's also like I'm just not that. It's not. This is not my story to tell or to even lead through the telling. And I'm always aware. I'm like, I know. I'm like, that seems clear to me. Sometimes I see directors that get hired and I go,
They're like,
that
"Didn't
person
you
shouldn't
know?
be that
Didn't
person
you
shouldn't be
know
directing
this
that
wasn't
far."
for you?"
So yeah, and it was kismet. It really was because Han was in our orbit.
Yeah.
With Gay Narcissus, and we were like, we had a couple ideas in company, and then it's just and I think it was Emily who actually asked, I know Han's an actor, but what about Han? And I know that Han went through Brown's MFA program, and it's a very devisey and to call it just to call it an acting program. I don't think it gives it enough credit because you're creating a lot of your own work. So Han is intrinsically not just an actor. Han's a maker. Han's a creator. Han can build worlds. We're all world builders. That's what we do. So it's
right.
I wasn't looking
well,
for,
Gay Narcissus is written, right?
Yeah, it is. It's also
I mean,
it's one of those shows where you're like, this won't be the title, and then it sticks. You know.
Oh, 2 years later.
Yeah, and you're like,
I totally didn't think that.
We forgot to come up with a title.
Like, this is funny for that one press release, and then you're like, oh, shit.
Like everybody's reacting to it. Gay Narcissist. That sounds awesome. Guess we got to keep that title.
Guess we got to keep it. I don't know if they're gonna like it. When they see
It's
what it is.
Narcissus, not.
Yeah. Well, it depends how you say it, right? That's also been a thing.
That's
depends how you say it. Anyway, but yeah.
So excellent. So you were up for the solo with Brenna, who did Union College.
Came up to teach at Union for 10 years.
Yeah.
And the first time you and I were in a room together was because of Brenna, because you saw me in a show.
That's correct.
In P-Town. So really, Brenna Geffers.
Brenna
Brenna
Geffers.
Geffers kind of brings it all together.
Yeah.
Or is it me?
Okay, all right. Get it.
Han was saying I knew Brenna before Troy Foundry Theater because Chris and I go to the Provincetown Tennessee Williams Festival and actually saw Han in a production of Pericles, which I was just talking about yesterday.
Oh my God.
I was talking.
Production?
Yes,
Wow.
I was talking to Andrew Vroman because Will Kemps is doing Pericles this summer. I said we saw a production of Pericles at Provincetown Tennessee Williams Festival, staged in a library on the second floor of a library with a ship built to scale, and it was staged on the ship. I just it's one of those productions.
It makes me really I was, I think, talking about this production with the people who you're talking about doing Pericles because they were at your bar. Right?
Yes.
And I was like, oh, I've done Pericles.
Yes. Yes.
Not a lot of people are like, I've done Pericles.
Ragliashi.
Yeah.
I saw. Yeah, that's where I was last night.
Yeah.
Is
wow.
Yeah, Rags in.
Shout out to Christoph.
Yeah.
Ragliachi.
I think doing a podcast is about shouting people out,
we
right?
shout
Like
out
that's
to
the
people
main
out. Yeah.
thing to be.
Where's the
doing, right?
podcast called Shout Out?
Oh my God.
I mean, there should be one that's
Here I was, came up with the play that changed my life, and actually someone else called their podcast the play that changed my life, and
What?
I should have been Shout Out all this time. Anyway, so
Wait, you're 15 podcasts in.
I know.
Stick the landing.
It's called Gay Narcissist.
It's
That's the
people are
title.
responding. Yeah.
That's the title now.
Well, excellent. Speaking of, let's get to it. The play
yeah.
that changed my life. Han.
Oh my God. Yes. What's the play that changed my life?
The play that changed my life. Now you
It's
can
okay. No. I mean, I know what it is.
Okay.
I know what it is.
Okay.
I know what it is.
You're just-
I saw King Lear when I was like maybe 12 or 11 at Lincoln Center with Christopher Plummer, and I already loved theater. I'd seen like musicals with my mom, and I'd seen Lion King, and I was very precocious, and I loved poetry, and I loved to read. But it's my first memory of seeing a Shakespeare, and also I remember Gloucester getting his eyes gouged out, and I know. And I loved it. I was a freaky little kid, and I had big feelings, and I loved theater. I loved theater people, and I didn't know theater could be like that, you know. And it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And I was a very, my parents were very strict about, like, I didn't really watch a lot of TV. I wasn't allowed to watch like PG-13 movies or even rated R movies, obviously. But so a lot of my first encounters with violence and horror and sex were all on stage, and so I remember King Lear and being like, whoa, I want to feel like this always. And, you know, again, I loved Shakespeare. And I grew up in a big family, and I think there was something about the play and seeing people wrestle with that stayed with me my whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How awesome. What year? Do you remember
Look it
how
up.
old you were?
I think I was like, I remember myself as like 11 or 12.
Yeah.
You know, we could look it up, and I could have been 8 or I could have been 16, but I was young.
I think that's wild. Like the visceral things that stick with us.
Yeah.
Like when we're children,
When we're
going to
children.
see. I have a nephew who has never seen me on stage. He's 30.
Is that by design?
Yeah, he's my godson. Yes, by design. He was taken to Mac Hayden Theater, and I think there was a mouse running up and down the aisle that scared the bejesus out of him, and he's just like, no theater,
sworn theater off.
no theater for
That'll
me.
do it.
That's
That'll do
too
it.
much for me.
Wow.
But yeah, I can imagine the.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt the same way. I remember seeing Les Mis around the same time as a kid. And, like, I was a drummer, and so I remember the drums being really loud in that show, but it was the same. It was like, oh, my God, Like, that was also a gateway to humanity for me. It was just seeing, this capacity. I grew up on Cape Cod, and I loved it there, but also, I was like an angry, weird kid. And I loved going to the theater. So, I think in some ways I would have...
Culture.
I would have gotten it from, it could have been something else that I saw, but for me it was King Lear. And that stayed my favorite play.
Awesome.
King Lear's how I got into grad school.
Really?
Yeah, I think the conversation I had with Doug Wager, we had an awesome conversation about King Lear. And I'm wild about the play. I've been in the play, wild about it.
I haven't been in it, and I want to direct it. I kind of really, really want to be in it, but it'll happen when it happens.
I like the full Cordelia doubling.
Sure.
I think.
I would play any role.
I've never actually seen the full Cordelia doubling, and I'm very interested in. I'd be interested in.
Does someone else double with Fool? Have I read that?
I was gonna say Kent, but that's absolutely wrong.
No, it's not.
No.
Can't be Gloucester. No.
I think the main one they do is Fool Cordelia.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's not- still
Where
done
did
a lot, though.
where did you do it?
I did it with the Saratoga Shakes. I played
right.
the full, with
Right.
Yeah. That was the last. Yeah, it was the last show I did with them actually.
Yeah.
I love playing the fool. That was fun. That was really fun. But if I directed it, I'd want to do doubling of the. But that is not the play that changed my life. It was fun. It was a fun play, but
it didn't change your life.
Didn't change my life.
You can have a different play.
Oh, I'm gonna have it. I actually have a good, quick story about what the play that changed my life.
I love this
Please.
question. I feel like a
I
fool.
do too.
I didn't realize that you were going to ask me that question, but of course now I understand. That is the name of the podcast. So I'm slowly catching up.
You didn't listen
wasn't
to the
prepped.
other 14
No, I wasn't
episodes
prepped.
before coming on?
I didn't prepare.
Oh, well, you did excellent. It was a home run. David is challenged to come up
Yeah,
with
I mean, try.
He's got it.
Good luck.
I got it.
So, and I think
cheated.
I think Patrick will understand a little bit of this too. So the play. So I went and saw when I was 6. My brother and I went to the Egg, okay, in downtown Albany, and saw Wizard of Oz.
Aww.
And I don't. Maybe I saw something in like grade school or whatever. Maybe 1 or 2 little sort of quote unquote live theatrical presentations, but I've never seen something this big or whatever. And I remember how wonderful it was because I'd seen the movie The Wizard of Oz, but like the way that they spun the porch off. Because they just had like a kind of wagon unit, right, for the house, and then the tornado hits, and I always remembered that the most because it was just like I was like, oh, how brilliant is that, right? Yeah. And that I got like afterwards, I got to meet, Dorothy,
Huge.
and it was huge. It was a huge thing to me. It was like I was meeting these massive celebrities.
Yeah.
Was it Helena?
No, I don't think it was Helena
Okay.
for that production because they had done it a few times, right?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. So I'm in a dressing room. Fast forward like 30 years later, whatever, and I'm in a dressing room and I'm sitting. I got John Romeo on one side of me. John's a very well-known actor locally, originally New York State Institute. David Bunce on the other side of me. David Baker's in the room. Byron Nilsson's in the room. Ron Kimura. Okay, now this is like the old guard actor group dressing room. And I loved this dressing room. We had so much fun in there. So much fun. And they're all real consummate professionals, too. And so by this point, like, I was working with the Theater Institute, and it felt good to be in a room with, like, actors like that, And so we got in this discussion about, like, what was the first play you saw? And we go around, and I had to think about it. Nobody had ever asked me that question. I was like, oh, what is it? And then I remembered the Wizard of Oz thing. I was like, I'm like, wow, I didn't realize how profound of an effect that show had on me. And David and John are just like looking at me from either side, and I'm like, I'm looking in a mirror, and I'm like, what? And David Bunce turned to me, and he goes, I was the Tin Man.
Aww.
And John Romeo goes, I was the wizard, and I started to cry.
I'm like gonna cry now.
I started to cry because I didn't realize that this show that I saw when I was a 6-year-old had these two actors who are two of my closest friends now, right?
Yeah.
Since then, I've directed them. You know what I mean? I've hired them as actors, and to go from like, working with them and looking
Perhaps
up
last
to them.
tape.
You know, and particularly John Romeo, because I'd seen John in some unbelievable performances, and I mean, to this day, I think John is arguably the best actor in this region. If John wanted to, I mean, John could have had this massive career, and he chose to like, he takes the devil's bargain, right? Which is you're gonna have a state contract, you're gonna do 6 to 8 shows a year. You're going to play every great role, and you're going to have a career for 30 years. And really, nobody outside of this region is going to know who the heck you are. Do you take that deal? And I'm like, I take that deal every time, every single time. Just to live in the culture of it. I don't give a shit about the fame and that, and that changed me. Because of the way I saw it as a kid, but also to kind of get that experience. Like that to me was like, oh, this was all worth it. This was all worth it. Yeah.
It's funny that deal. My first roommate in Manhattan, living on East 99th Street, between 3rd and Lex. Yeah, little Spanish Harlem.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right down the street from the bus depot. Yeah. My first roommate, he shouldn't have had a roommate. It was a 1-bedroom, not even a 1-bedroom, a studio with the bathtub in the kitchen, in a box, and was Elias Koteas, who he's got a career. He's a very well-known actor. He did True West on Broadway. He was Philip Seymour Hoffman's understudy, but he was Casey Jones in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He did a number of Coppola films, and he's done Chicago Fire, and as 20-year-olds, what do you want your career to be? And he was like, are you kidding me? I want to be a movie star. I want to be, and he was signed like right in acting school and did the John Hughes film, Some Kind of Wonderful, like within a year, he was like, okay. And I was like, I just want to work all the time. I just want to, work on great material. And it's like, here he is now, and he's got a career. He does television all the time. And here I am now, and I created a theater company, and it's like I work as much as I want, and it's just like, choose your deal.
Yeah.
That's it. Choose your deal. Yeah. No, I'm blessed, though. I mean, I'm very content. I'm content in the way that this has mapped itself. I love living up here. I loved being in Philly, but I realized pretty soon, pretty quickly, I wasn't going to stay there. I think you and I talked about this, right? Mm-hmm. I love New York. If I were to abandon everything here, I'd go to New York, or I would jump on a plane and go with Stefan and Sang, two of my friends who are Swedish, to Thailand, and I'd live between Thailand and Sweden. They live in both places. That's
interesting dichotomy.
I know. I mean, right? I mean, like Thailand and Sweden. They kind of live half and half. But they're professors at RPI, but they're going back to Thailand. They're like, come with us, and I'm like,
yeah.
I can't just drop. But if I were to drop everything, I'd either do that or I'd go back to New York because I love New York.
Yeah, my theme for the Capital Region Festival of Theater is the Capital Region's a great place to love theater your whole life long.
Yes.
like from the time you're 8 to you're 80.
Yeah.
And it's a good time to leave. It's good to come back.
Yeah, that's good.
It's good to take a weekend.
Yep.
It's good.
That's
it's
nice.
good to go away for a 2-show Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
You do a lot of those 2-show Wednesdays.
Got it coming up.
Right.
Gosh,
I'm doing Orlando and Water for Elephants.
Oh, sure.
Wednesday.
Nice.
In New York?
Yeah.
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 Ooh, great. Mm-hmm.
I see 300 shows a year.
That is not an exaggeration.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you still like it?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. It's qualified, but yeah.
No,
it's true. I can't.
And we never walk out
Good for you.
Isn't that
for you? No.
we
Never walk out.
out.
Well, it's like we were talking about theater at the start, and it is true that because I think theater is what it is, and because there's nothing worse than when you're seeing a play and it's going terribly. If it hits you different than a movie. When you're like,
Right.
this movie's not great, versus when you're seeing a play where
Well, because
things
it's
are going wrong.
live.
Yeah, things are
And you
going
can't
wrong.
and you can't leave.
No, you can't help.
Like we don't. I mean, people leave,
Yeah.
right? But we
People
like
do.
so you as if because you're not going to leave, especially if you're seeing friends. If you're seeing,
course, you
and
don't
this is
leave.
what
It's-
happens. You get smaller. That's what I always
try to
equate it
dream. I try to just dream about
I get
something
small.
about
I
a
get.
show
I get.
love.
I just.
you
I
know?
get very. I get very like. I just get smaller because I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
It's like I said to you. I said sometimes I have a really hard time. I'm so into doing it.
Yeah.
Like I could not see as much theater as you see. Not in a million trillion years.
No one does.
No, I mean
Only you.
No
Nobody
one
does.
does. I mean, like like whomever.
I'm in awe of the amount of that you and Chrissy. I'm in absolute awe of it, and I'm like, oh, could I do that? And I'm like, no.
It's amazing.
No, I don't think I can sit still for that long. I'm just that's
Well,
you know
it tells
I'm
me
like
something about you and your capacity for empathy. Even just directing as an actor, usually it's a different muscle that has to sit and absorb.
Yeah.
And I have days where I'm like, I just want to be up on my feet, and it's like, no, your job is to absorb and watch. So not everyone can do that.
No.
300 times a year.
it's a lot of absorbing.
Yeah.
It's great though.
Yeah, in Provincetown, you do 3-4 shows.
Yeah. So
No,
kudos
we
to
loved
you.
the festival. Yeah. No, I just think it's like. I mean, I remember living in the city and missing Peter Brook's Cherry Orchard, and missing, things. I mean, I saw a lot, but it's like I don't want to miss.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just think it's the most adventure. When Tom talks about adventure in Glass Menagerie, that's me. That's how I feel about theater. It's like I just crave adventure.
I said that on the way here
Yeah.
when I was talking about just like the way my life has like shifted and whether personal relationships, and that there was a point in my life where I was like, I'm not living the adventure that I know my life is, and I have to make some serious changes and I did, and that's like, and I have had those adventures. I mean, I think about the three of us collectively, like it's hard, it's a slog, but like we're really lucky.
Yeah.
We get to work with great artists and tell amazing and so many stories, and I mean, and because we have a biological need to tell stories, and we intrinsically understand that. And I feel for folks that don't understand that about themselves. No, you have to get it out. You have to tell stories. Yeah. Because otherwise it's like we're giving word and images and feelings and concepts a place to sort of like grow and thrive and come to life. Because if we don't, like, what the hell are we here for? What does all this mean?
Right? To be known, to be truly known. And, going back to Jen Silverman.
Yeah, that's right. Nice.
Playwright of The Roommate. It's being able to tell everything.
Yeah.
You want to be loved, but you want to be loved for everything, who you are, good, bad, indifferent, spots and all, that
Yeah. Here's my mess.
you want to be loved truly,
It's not what the play's about.
full. Yeah.
It's
Not.
It's
This
not
play,
that.
I only started saying it was a love story like yesterday. So there you go.
But
Anyway,
it's
All right.
a love yourself, love one another story.
just
So.
figure it out. It's a figure it out play.
Yeah. Figure it out.
And the mess is good. Show the mess.
Show the mess at In Camera, coming up this Wednesday, running through
1st through 4th, and the 8th through 11th. So Wednesday to Saturday, 2 weeks on Fulton Street The address it's
503 Fulton Street, right?
Is it 503?
That sounds right. No. 503, 403, 503.
I have
Well,
it,
David
I
checked.
have
All
it
the
right
shows
on
are at
my
8
notes
p.m.
here.
All the shows are
Wait,
8
hold
p.m.
on, let me see.
Yes?
And I've read the play now. Let me
It's
tell you this.
403. 403.
Okay, I
Fulton
got
Street.
2 of the digits.
403. It's a kind of new performance and artistic space called Upstairs Troy. It's basically above Shalimar, right next to the Whiskey Pickle. My friends, that's a call out to them. My friends at Whiskey Pickle, which is a very cool pub, cool bar. It's been a little art scene kind of happening around that part of Troy. I mean, you have these little art scenes popping up all over Troy, and this is just a new spot where that's happening. And so it's exciting because that's what we do, right? We always go in new spaces, and this is another cool little new space. And it's limited seating,
wait.
So yeah.
It's short too, so if you hate it, it'll be over quickly.
Yeah. So you're shrinking.
We never do anything longer than 55 minutes anyway. I can't remember the last time we've done a play that was longer than an hour. Can you? Where
Hard
There's Smoke
Candy
was
wasn't
like
an
70.
hour?
Hard Candy was maybe it was a little over, but it wasn't. It was less than. It had to have been less than 80 minutes. Definitely.
Yeah, I would say that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Han Van Sciver, what a pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank
what a
you.
delight. Thank you so much for having
Thank you
me.
so much. I
Yeah.
can't wait.
And this guy, whatever.
Yeah, David Girard.
Thank you, Patrick. This was fun. This is so much fun. I want to come back on this podcast.
Lovely. Shout out
Excellent.
to my mom, who I'm sure will watch this or listen to this eventually.
Oh,
Hi, Mom.
shout out Han's mom.
Hi, Mom.
Excellent.
I'm coming for Thanksgiving.
Shut up, dude. God damn it. Oh, she's going to love that. All right.
Anyway, thank you all for joining us for the play that changed my life. Go see In Camera. Go see something. And I'll see you in a theater soon.